All right. Well, welcome back to the vBrownbag, and today we're going to talk about why OpenStack. It's a pretty simple question. There was a much longer thing that I had planned out on what I was going to talk about, the value of OpenStack, the value of open communities, but it all boils down to one simple question, which is why OpenStack? We've heard the name thrown around here a lot, so it kind of made sense for me to talk about a little bit more what it means, especially in the VMware ecosystems. But let's start by talking about me, because I'm selfish. So my name is Wright. I'm a blogger and a systems architect and a cloud pundit. I blog at discoposse.com, and you can find me at discoposse on Twitter, and you can use that really long URL for LinkedIn, or just search for discoposse. Trust me, there's only one. And we're here because of community. Community is an amazing thing that happens around technology. It's not just around the actual technology. Technology is sexy, and it's fun, and it's cool. But what makes it fun is that we're here together to help support each other and learn together. Open source and OpenStack is entirely wrapped around the same concept. It's kind of the exemplification of what community is. There's challenges in it as well, but ultimately, it's driven by a collective. Now, if you want to find a little bit more about OpenStack, I'm going to shamelessly plug that you can go to pluralsight.com, and I have a little longer 2.5-hour course that tells you exactly about a bigger introduction to OpenStack, and hopefully very soon we'll have another one called OpenStack for VMware administrators that's in process right now. But the big thing I want to talk about is OpenStack for the enterprise, because we've heard about it being used at vendors and PayPal and eBay. Maybe not that enterprise, because I don't know if that one would run OpenStack, but anyways, it seemed appropriate. Now we know that open source itself is not new. It's been around since the 70s, possibly even before. We know that OpenStack is not really new. It's 4.5 years old right now. I mean, it's new in as far as vSphere's age and maturity, but it's not brand new. It's been around long enough for people to test it out. Enterprise adoption of open technologies is also not new. What we do have is this weird conversation that happens is, why are we always talking about it like it's new? And that's because when you think about what the enterprise is doing, it is new. Even though we've embraced a lot of open technologies, a lot of enterprises are still a little slow burn on being able to bring on something brand new. It's kind of on the tips of tongues of many CIOs right now is, why aren't we using OpenStack? Well, then we have to ask the opposite, is why would we? Now, open clouds and open tools and open source as a general ecosystem has been around. Products and projects are all over the place. One of the big challenges you face is someone says, hey, let's use it because it's free. Open does not equal free. Let's just lay that out right now. You may be able to download it and deploy it, but it doesn't mean that it's free, because there's more cost to it. It's like a free kitten. There's a lot of other maintenance required. And you gotta, feed that thing. Trust me, I know. They get really complainy after a while. It's also not perfect. There's a lot of large bearded people that will tell you about the amazement of, sort of like culture of open source, and that's great. But it's also not perfect, nor is the walled garden. But open itself as a methodology is fundamentally good. The contributions coming from vendors as well into the open source ecosystem is impressive. So this is why we're kind of switching away. VMware themselves are traditionally a walled garden, but we've heard lots of things about their embracing for the VIO. They've embraced open development with other partners. They've used other OpenStack alternatives that they've created with VIO. The other VIO. Well, one's VIO, one's VIO. Man, I should have rehearsed that. And this is the main reason why we think about people want to know what's happening when they buy a product. Everybody know what this one's all about? Right, what's in the box? I ask this every time someone brings a black box application. I say, I need to know what's happening underneath the covers. It's a very important thing that as systems administrators and architects, we've become much more aware of what's happening inside the data center, right down to the application layer and the infrastructure layer. OpenStack, there's a lot in the box, and there's a lot to know about it. And then we look at these guys. These guys are always my great example. If anybody knows who these fine fellows are, if you've been to Las Vegas or looked into Magic, these are Penn and Teller. So what's interesting about what Penn and Teller do is they tell you how they do all their tricks. They effectively open source their magic. But you still can't do it like they do. It's the same problem that happens with people that are using OpenStack. It's like, great, you always hear the excuse, well, here's the code. You can just update it yourself, or you can modify it. Well, maybe you're not a Python developer. Maybe you are. Maybe you don't want to do this. And that's why VMware is making important inroads in OpenStack, which is answering the question, why OpenStack? There we go. So I'm going to shamelessly steal all my images from Chris Wall. So go to wallnetwork.com and make sure you go and find out where I got this. Chris did a great post on the VMware iteration of OpenStack that's coming out. And we can take a look at the evolution of how things have come. Now, that's a fairly short evolution. You can see how they participated with NSX. Obviously, Nicira heavily embraced the OpenStack community and the OpenStack technologies. They've leveraged vCenter as their management for issuing into the Nova scheduler. And then they've also dealt with Cinder drivers that go down into vSAN, or virtual SAN. Sorry, I got to remember to say that right. Copyrights not intended. And general VMware data storage. So there is a VMDK driver so that you can use Cinder block storage. Sorry to those non-block lovers out in the audience there. If you look at the general layout, this is one of the most complex things we try to explain VMware and OpenStack and how they're going to interact. But it's a fairly simple layout. If you see, we've got vCenter server that's up at the top, no different than it is today. We have our A cluster, we have our B cluster. Underneath the covers, we have VMFS, traditional data stores, or virtual SAN. Using the same projects that are in the OpenStack environment, we have Nova, which is the compute and the compute scheduler. We have Glance, which is where the images are stored. And then Cinder, which is the actual block driver. If we start to marry them up to see what the feature is versus the VMware equivalent, it started to make sense. There's actually a ton more projects that are in OpenStack. And this is why VMware got really involved, and they decided to lay out exactly what they're trying to do. Now, there's a lot more that's happening under the covers nowadays with the VMware integrated OpenStack. And the reason is because it was difficult to make it work before. So for anybody that's running VMware right now, and they're running vSphere, and they're running vCenter, and there's going to be a question, why not OpenStack? And then the question when we ask, why OpenStack, it's going to be a lot harder to ask. As administrators in vSphere environments, it's important for us to understand the business use case of what OpenStack can do for us. It's mostly around the consumption model. VMware effectively could be eating their own ecosystem alive. Why would I put vCloud in front of this if I can use OpenStack? I can create heat templates. I can use Horizon to actually deliver the self-service catalog. And VMware said, go for it. In fact, we're going to make it easier. We're going to make our own iteration of it. So this is an important thing. So as VMware and vSphere administrators, we all have a responsibility to at least understand what the ecosystem looks like so that when that question comes up, why OpenStack, then we have an answer. And the real why, there's a lot of them. It's a business use case that's going to map in your particular environment. It's absolutely important that you understand business limitations, business constraints, and business requirements, and to see where OpenStack is appropriate. And it entirely may not be. Nor would be Hyper-V, and maybe nor would be vSphere itself. It depends on where you're coming from. But OpenStack is something that we should all look into. If you want to find out more information, as I said, feel free to reach out to me. I'm Disco Posse on Twitter. And I'm crazy and I love answering questions about OpenStack because I'm a good guy like that. So if you want to reach out, like I said, feel free to. You can also send it to eric@discoposse.com. And if you want to talk a little while after here, we're going to be hanging around the floor. And keep watching what's going on because the VMware VIO integrated OpenStack is going to be a very important thing, and it's going to be very important to you. And then when somebody comes to you and they say, why OpenStack, you're going to have the answer. Thank you very much.